I'm Rosie, this is Rosy Hardy Gardening. If you like our videos, then please do help and subscribe to the channel. Today I'm just going to do a few common mistakes that people do with plants going into the winter. And really a lot of it is about how do you overwinter sort of the half-hardy stuff, when do you take cuttings, and how can you protect plant material. So let's start off with things like this, the Oenothera, and a lot of people struggle to keep them going through. If you've got them in containers, then it is quite an easy thing. Make sure that you do not cut them right the way back down to ground level, so you're not meant to be cutting them right back down here. But if they've got dead flower heads like this, or they're just got a little bit of growth down at the bottom, then just remove all of that and just take it down to an area and down to a height at around about 15 to 20 centimetres, about 8 inches in height. That will then leave them, so if they're plants in the ground, that then means that this type of material is not making the plant rock. And you won't get that horrible gapping at the bottom and water getting in and it getting frosted. This top growth then protects the base of the plant. Now it's exactly the same if you've got it in a container, leave it like that, but then move the container somewhere where it is not going to get waterlogged, because it is the waterlogging and getting a really horrible wet soggy root ball that makes it's that kills them off rather than the cold, because they're not actively growing, so therefore they can't move that moisture by absorbing it and breathing it out through their leaves. So basically what you need to do is move them to somewhere, a dry shed which has a bit of light, a cold greenhouse, that's absolutely fine, but do not water them. If you find it very, very difficult to go into your greenhouse and not pick up your watering can and water everything, then another tip is lay the plants on their sides of the ones that you do not need to water. So they're all in a neat, tidy line like that, and you know perfectly well you're not going to water them, and that way they will stay better. And then in the spring when you need to, you stand them back up again and then you can water them. So that is one thing. So with the Oenothera, it's down to half height, and then put them somewhere dry and do not water them over the winter months. You've also then got things like the woody salvias, and this particular one is Hot Lips. This is a very favourite one of people's. It doesn't look very hot lipped at the moment. Its flowers are all white, but that's because we've had some really high temperatures just recently, and the buds were initiated in high temperatures and then now white. They will start to turn red on the next ones that come through. Now these have got quite good shape. This one is a better shape than the other one. This one is a little bit straggly and not looking fantastic. And a lot of people think that they should be taking all the material in the winter and actually cutting it down, right down to that sort of height. That is a no-no. Do not do that to this type of material at this time of the year, and we are talking late autumn. That is not good for the plant. So what you should be doing is you need to be looking at it. You've got a lot of dead heads here, old buds and everything else, and all you need to do is, you can do it. If it's a nursery, we do it like this. You probably won't want to look at plants if you cut it like this. So if I cut it a little bit higher than we would just go across the top like that, and there you go. Your plant is neat and tidy and everything else. Now in the garden, you may not like that sort of bottle brush type top. So what you can do now is you can tidy up and you can get rid of all those sort of dead bits. It's quite satisfying going through and getting rid of dead pieces, because at the end of the day you're going to have to tidy it up in the spring anyway. So if you do it now and tidy it up so that it's all nice and clean, no dead sticks on there, immediately you are seeing that it's no longer looking like a horrible sort of, I don't know, what is it? It's a bit like a shaving brush type top that it's got there. So once we've got all of those dead pieces all cut out nicely out of here, then we can look at these horrible, because what happens with that is you get horrible dag ends. So we can trim all those down slightly and just make it a little bit tidier. We can also go, well, I want it to look a little bit better shaped so that it's in. So you're giving it a little bit of a proper haircut, because there are still some flower buds on there that shouldn't be there. And once you've given it that sort of tidy up so that it's got a framework that doesn't look quite as regimented and cut through, you can see now it's quite a lot tidier. And once you do start cutting things back, you realize that you've actually missed a lot of the older dead stuff that was there as well. And you know, you don't want to go in too far. So from the framework we had at the beginning, we've gone to something that is nicely shaped, and that is what you need to do with these. Now these will, and most of them this year, even though we had a very hard frost here in the UK and most of these did start to come back from the base, but that may not be the best way to do it. So you may have them in containers. Again, bring them in. They can go with your Oenotheras. You can lay them down like that if you want to, or you have them like so. And you may also need to be using some garden fleece. And garden fleece is this. It's a very good material, and you can fleece over the top of plants. Just be careful when you fleece over the top of the plants, because sometimes when you go down like this, you can pull the plant material down, and that's not very good. And a lot of people just tend to put the fleece over the top like so. And yes, that's fine. But what about the base of the plants? A lot of gardens and gardeners have aluminium greenhouses and aluminium bases, and those get very cold. So when you are trying to insulate your plants, make sure you've got something as an insulating layer on top of an aluminium bench, or even an old, wooden benches, something like polystyrene, something like K-span. If you can just put that insulating material, even bubble wrap, underneath, and bubble wrap the pots, because it's not just the top that needs protecting, the roots, and the roots are the main part of your plant that you need to protect the most. So remember to bubble wrap the base, or completely wrap them in this fleece, because that will help a lot. But bubble wrap is a lot better. If you haven't got bubble wrap, cardboard, but just remember cardboard will get damp. It's much better if you use something like bubble wrap, and that will be fine. When you have big plants which you need to protect in your greenhouse, be very aware that you do not need to overwater. So I would suggest that you try and keep your watering can out of the way. Most through the winter they won't need it. Now, one of the big mistakes people make is they have lovely plants like this in a really good pot. They're probably evergreen, and they know that they need protection. So they will put something like the horticultural fleece over the top of the plants like so, and they will just leave it. Now there's not a problem with that. That is absolutely fine. But all you're doing is protecting this top piece. If your container is sitting onto ground which is not insulated, i.e. it's slats of wood or it's slats of aluminium, and aluminium can be really, really cold in the winter, no real protection from the cold weather onto this actual container, and that's what you need to do. So get yourself something to go underneath it. And I would suggest, because in the winter you don't need the drainage that the slats are causing, put them and sit them on top of something like polystyrene, bubble wrap, K-span, that insulating material. Put that underneath for the winter time, and then take it away later on. So they're sitting on that. Then make sure, if you've got big root balls, that you cover that root ball in something like bubble wrap, so that the whole root ball is covered with bubble wrap. Leave the top here where the compost is, or the soil is, free so that they can breathe. And when you have your fleece, remember to remove it daily, so that, unless of course it's still absolutely freezing, just to give the plant a bit of airing. And the other big mistake people do in greenhouses, they forget that they need to ventilate during the winter. Winter ventilation in a greenhouse is highly important, because otherwise you get too much condensation, too much moisture in the air, and you then get disease setting in. So remember, when it's a nice sunny day, a little bit of wind, open up the ventilations, let it vent through, and then shut it up, and you've got a drier atmosphere inside that thing. When you're using fleece like this, it's quite a good idea to get some canes. And it's quite a good idea to put canes in like so, above the height of your foliage, and you can have 3 or 4 and make a little framework. And then when you put the horticultural fleece over the top of this, you're creating a wonderful little tent for your plant to sit in, and it'll be lovely and cozy in there. Brilliant. And that's the best way to do it. With these, the oregano, people think that they've got to cut them right the way back down, i.e. take all of these dead flower heads right the way off down to the bottom like so. That's not really helpful, because you want to protect this beautiful crown. Now these will be staying outside, these will be in the garden. So all I would suggest with doing with these is literally cutting off the dead heads, leaving a bit of old growth like so, so that there is still a bit of extra protection over the new growth here by keeping these pieces here, because those pieces will keep any snow or anything just above that growth that you want, which is this new growth at the bottom here, and you want to protect that. The other thing that a lot of people make mistakes about is they have their penstemons and their salvias, and you get to probably nearly October or maybe the end of September, and you go, oh crumbs, I haven't taken my cuttings. It's too late really for them to be taken. You must remember to take your insurance tip cuttings from things like your salvias and your penstemons before we get frost, before the plants are starting to really start to die back, because these are just starting to go into their autumn growth, so they're not really thinking about putting down roots if you take tip cuttings from them now. The day length has got too short, therefore there's not enough time for those young cuttings, unless you've got artificial light and artificial heat, for them to actually take properly. So remember to take your salvia and your penstemon cuttings much earlier. Take them at the end of August, beginning of September, when there's still lovely fresh growth on them, because all of this growth is starting to get woody, and you will not get rooted cuttings from those. Thank you very much for watching, and please do subscribe to the channel.